Morning, guys. Just a little rant, really, and something that's every time I've got something on my mind, I like to probably share with you guys anything that's troubling me, and I always like to have an opinion about things. Most things being bushcraft or outdoor related, etc. One of the very common questions that keeps coming up, maybe on Facebook, bushcraft groups, etc., or even knife groups. I've seen it on knife groups. Is oiling your knives. Okay. Now, oiling your knife it's not really complicated. You just grab some oil, put it on your knife, wipe the excess off, and then sheath it. Okay. But what oil do you use? Okay. So I've been reading a lot this morning on different types of steels and their porosity. Porosity meaning they absorb, absorb liquids, etc. A bit like wood. Okay, so you've got some wood, you put some oil on it, and obviously wood is porous, so it absorbs the oil into the wood and stays there. Okay, that's what I mean by porous, by things being porous. The same as natural stone, and things like that. But we look at steel. Now, all depends on how the steel is manufactured. Okay. Yes, steel is porous because of the way it's machined, the way it's manufactured. So, like your carbon steels, even gold, silver, stainless steel to a certain degree, but things like that's been treated, like stainless steel, is a bit more, so shall I say, it takes a lot longer for stainless steel to absorb things, okay? But all the same, all depends on the manufacturing process, on how porous the steel is. Does that affect what oil we use? No, not really. We put oil on our knives to protect the knives from rusting, okay? Even with my stainless steel knives, I do put a coat of oil on it, obviously before I sheath it. Not because it's going to get rusty or anything, because obviously stainless steel takes an incredibly long time to rust. A lot of people say buy stainless steel knives because they don't rust. Well, that's actually not true. Stainless steel does rust, it just takes longer, okay? If you've got carbon steel with a high carbon content, yes, that will degrade and rust a lot quicker if it's not protected. It all depends on what kind of protection the blade's got it on the first place. That's why a lot of companies like K-Bar, I can just reel them off my head, quite a few, that's put coating on blades. It's not to cure the problem, it's rather to prevent the problem. So when you see people bluing the blades, or companies adding a powder coat onto a knife blade, onto the steel, that is a prevention, it's not a cure, because eventually the more you use the knife, the more the coating will start to degrade and come off or peel off or wear off, and then you'll have to oil it. Okay, but it's a bit of a technical one, this, and if you read about metals and the porosity of metals and what oils to use, what oils not to use, there's a lot of science behind it, and being me, I'm not really interested. I'll get bored really easy on reading things about science. Some things I'm interested in, but the long, boring stuff, I really can't be bothered. That's just me, my mental capacity of absorbing things. So just to break down, yes, steel on knives is porous. Yes, it will absorb things, but it's nothing to be worried about. It's not like a piece of wood or anything like that. that if you touch it with your fingers, if it's not being protective, it will soak the sweat and the oils from your hands and get straight into the wood. Knives with a much higher carbon content, yes, it will soak sweat, oil to a certain degree, fingerprints. I've had many knives, carbon steel knives over the years, that I can still see my fingerprints on, despite the fact that I've oiled it. Okay, you can't really stop it, unless obviously you get some wet and dry sandpaper and then scrub it out. But I think there's a bit of a bit of a misconception, I think, in the world of bushcraft and camping. That is something different. Okay. I've noticed in the past, maybe the past 5 years or so, that a lot of, and when I say this, I'm not putting you guys down in instructors or anything like that, okay? This is just my 2 pence worth. There is, in my opinion, there is too much health and safety, okay? There is way too much health and safety. That's kind of trying to be incorporated, excuse me, just had my breakfast, incorporated into bushcraft. It's not so much a bad thing, especially if you're teaching kids and you want qualifications to teach bushcraft and survival and that kind of things. That's a totally separate thing, okay? But for me, what I'm basically trying to say is, for me, the more you keep adding health and safety things, the more you're taking away from the experience, okay? Now again, to pass bushcraft courses these days, you have to take health and safety in consideration, especially if you're teaching people, teaching kids and things like that. So they have to know, when they're carving, they have to wear gloves, and I try not to laugh about this, but I've even heard people have to wear goggles when they're carving, okay? I'm not having a dig at you guys, you instructors that do teach that, but for me, it takes away what bushcraft, like especially traditional bushcraft, is supposed to be. Okay. Now, if you're very mindful of safety in the first place, and you teach this stuff, like how to hold a knife properly and things like that, then there shouldn't be really any need to add too much health and safety into the equation. Again, it's not a bad thing, but it takes away from the experience. You're going outdoors, you've got a knife, yes, which is going to be razor sharp, so you have to take things like that in consideration. But accidents do happen, guys. End of the day, we are only human. We can go outdoors, we can wrap ourselves in bubble wrap, and we'll still find a way to either stab ourselves, cut ourselves, or fall down, break something. We're only human. But it just takes too much away from bushcraft and what bushcraft actually is. I think if you see people like Ray Mears wearing gloves and goggles, and then people watch some of his series, and if he's wearing gloves and goggles, I think people will laugh at him because it looks strange, it'll look funny. So he doesn't. And a lot of the bushcraft instructors that I know over the years don't either. Whether or not they, other bushcraft instructors and other survival schools and bushcraft schools go as far as putting goggles on and gloves on and things, is a different matter. Anyway, I'm not going to go away from the subject. I'm here to talk about oiling knives, but a lot of the health and safety aspect of it, which I'm trying to explain to you, does involve knives and oiling knives, because it kind of touches on the same subjects. Okay. Okay, so if you have, a lot of people in their kit have like different types of knives for different types of things. and the most common one is a food prep knife. So a lot of bushcrafters will have a knife, whether it be a stainless steel fixed blade knife, or maybe even a carbon knife, or a folding knife, what I use sometimes, and they will use that purely for food prep and nothing else. No wood prep or anything else. And that would just be like carving meat, bacon, things like that. Bread, cheese, whatever you want to cook, and that will be their knife for food prep, and that's it. Okay, and then you'll have a backup knife for the main tasks of bushcraft. Like carving, whittling, just general camp tasks. And then you have your larger tools, like your large bladed articles for chopping, for batoning, for things like that. And then we go into axes, tomahawks, whatever, for chopping wood and things. So that all ties into the same thing. Okay, so what oil do we use? And there's a lot of people on the bushcraft groups and websites, pages, bushcraft discussion groups that say, no, you can't use this oil for this, you can't use this oil for that, blah 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 blah. And it's like playing ping pong, one against the other, and then an argument will start between, yes, but this is a food grade, so you can't use that, so you can use this with food, and it still protects your knives. The oil that you use on this knife cannot be used for food prep and things like that. And you get what I'm saying, you've probably seen it yourself. What I'm trying to say is, I think all the health and safety aspect of it is just getting a bit out of control now. We come outdoors, sometimes on our own, getting some peace and quiet. We might build a shelter, do a wild camp for a couple of nights or more, just to get away from society, just to get away from that bubble of society that we are bred into, around health and safety rules and regulations that a lot of governing bodies provide, and things of that nature. But if you are one of those people that takes health and safety really, really seriously, there is little things you can do. There is ways around it. Me being old school, I don't really, I'm not really ashamed to say this, but I'm old school, woodsman, bushcrafter, and things like that. I don't really take health and safety in consideration. What I mean is, I don't really believe in doing this, doing that because somebody tells you that that's the right oil to put on, or that kind of thing. I pretty much figure things out for myself, and I always have done. I'm a bit of a traditionalist, if you like. Like in the 1750s or earlier, going to the 1800s and further, 1900s, where there was really no such thing as health and safety guys. They wasn't bothered what oil they put on their knives, as long as it protected the blades. Quite often, it was just oils that come from animals fats to oil the blades and things. But even oils and animal fats can go wrong on blades. So, and I'll show you what I mean. Okay, so this is my Kephart style knife that I've done a 3-part video on. So if you missed that, just go on to part 1, part 2 and then part 3. But be warned, part 2 is nearly 50 minutes long, so it'll probably bore you, but there's some good tips in there and things. But anyway, don't want to go off subject again, you know what I'm like. So you get your knife, you've done what you need to do, and you're not going to be using this. This is carbon. This is not a carbon steel knife what I'm holding. This is a stainless steel one. So I just thought I might clear that up. But imagine if this was a carbon steel blade. You've done what you need to do bushcraft wise, and you are not going to be using your knife probably for the rest of the day. Who knows? So because it's a carbon steel blade, it is wet where you are in the forest. You've been carving wood that's a bit wet, or processing stuff that's a bit wet. So normal people do. Again, the only thing I've got is this. It's not a rag. I'm just sat on the jacket. Okay, so wipe the blade clean as much as you can, including this part as well, the tang. That's also can be important because they can rust as well. So give it a good wipe. Make sure there's as much moisture off as possible. Then I haven't got any with me. Well, I have, but it's in my backpack, which I can't be bothered to get up. But anyway, you get your oil, you put your oil on, you wipe your blade, maybe a little bit of the tang as well. Then you put the knife in your pocket, not in your pocket, in your sheath, sorry. I'm talking about over safety of putting knives in your pocket. Bit ironic, but yeah. So then you sheath your knife, and then you leave it until you next want to use it. Now, a lot of people, including myself sometimes, use your knife for more than one purpose. So sometimes I will use my bushcraft knife like they did back in the day for everything. Okay, so I'll use it for carving tent pegs, whittling, whatever, and I'll also use it when I'm cooking my dinner sometimes. You know, for cutting meat, for cutting bread, for that general kind of thing. And then again, we're only human. We all make mistakes, okay? And then we forget and think, oh, you know what I haven't done? I've not wiped my blade. And I've got 3-in-1 oil all over my blade, and I've just used it to cook my bread or my bacon, my meat, whatever. You know, and we all do it. We at some stage we've all done this, I'm sure. But what I'm trying to say is, does it matter? Does it really matter? You know, I think people are a little bit obsessed about health and safety, in my opinion. It's getting ridiculous now. Before long, you won't be able to go outdoors without wrapping yourself in bubble wrap, as I said earlier. It's just getting really, really ridiculous now what people are coming out with. And they said, now, unless you're using oil that contains really harmful chemicals, like like arsenic or something like that, which a lot of oils today don't really contain enough chemicals that is going to be used for anything that's going to kill you, okay? Unless it's specifically designed for something corrosive, or maybe specifically designed for lubing your car, and it's really got really high acid content or things of that nature. Obviously, we don't want to use that for food prep, obviously. But when we talk about the very common oils, I'll name two. Two common oils that you'll find in almost every supermarket is WD-40 and 3-in-1 oil. Those are the two main oils that probably people use on their knives and most things around the house, and the most common two oils that you see in most supermarkets, DIY stores, B&Qs and things like that. Okay, and I use both them myself. I use 3-in-1 oil a lot of my knives. I highly recommend it. You know, it does a fantastic job when you do it right. But like I explained to somebody on Facebook the other day, if you do use 3-in-1, make sure you give it a good shake. Okay, so shake it for about 30 seconds before applying it, and that activates all the ingredients inside when it mixes inside. So I guess what I'm saying is, does it really matter? If you look at the specs of WD-40 and 3-in-1 oil, right, there's not really anything in there that can poison you or kill you, okay? You would have to consume a ridiculous amount of that stuff, right, to have even the slightest effect. We are not taking 3-in-1 oil in the field and we're not drinking it, like a cup of tea or something. We're not doing that, okay? This is not what this is about. This is about putting a drop of oil on your knife, wiping your blade, then sheathing it. Okay, that's all we're talking about. Okay, so if you using your knife for food prep as well, okay, and you do forget to wipe it, as I do sometimes, you know, we're only human, guys. We, you know, and you start cutting your bacon or your bread, you know, does it really matter? You know, there is a lot worse things out there than a drop of 3-in-1 oil on your blades. Okay, now this is a video, it's not going to target anybody. I'm not saying that you should stop using this oil or stop using that oil, as long as it works. But you know, I've been doing this for, well, wild camping and bushcraft for a very long time, and you know, I've never once got sick or blood poisoning from using 3-in-1 oil or whatever oil I used previous to that on my blades. You know, I'm still here. I've never been sick for that reason. There is far much worse things out there than putting a little tiny drop of oil on your knife and then using that to cut your bread, your bacon, whatever. Okay, this is what I'm trying to say. Okay, it ain't gonna kill you, guys. Okay, now unless you've got an extremely rare condition where you might be maybe allergic to 3-in-1 oil or WD-40 or Ballistol or whatever oil you're going to put on your knife, then you know it's very margin, very tiny. Okay, so I don't know why people are making a big deal out of it. I really don't. Now, if you are using a knife specifically for food and nothing else, then by all means use a food grade mineral oil that is certified food safe. That is perfectly fine, because you're using that constantly for that purpose. Okay, but when you're talking about bushcraft, you know, we're not chefs. You know, you don't teach bushcraft or you don't do bushcraft in the kitchen if your job is a chef. Okay, and most kitchens I've seen anyway, they don't. No, I've never seen a chef that puts oil on his chef knives in the kitchen. Okay, they'll just put them in, chuck them in a wash basin, maybe with some soap and water, wash it, wipe it, or the pot washer, and then chuck it back into the knife block or magnet, whatever. Okay, so again, that's the food industry. That is totally different. Okay, we are not in the food industry outdoors. We are outdoors. Okay, so you know, to me, it doesn't make no difference whatsoever about, you know, it's just become an obsession. If you are absolutely obsessed with health and safety, doing this and doing that, putting the right oil on that at the right minute, and then, you know, then you might as well, you know, and it's hard to say, you might as well stay at home and not go outdoors at all, because there are worse risks out there than there is just putting a drop of oil on a blade to stop it from rusting. There is far more worse things out there. You know, you're looking at viruses going around like COVID and things like that, and then people are worried about a little drop of oil on a knife. You know, I just don't know what the world's coming to. I really don't know. Really don't know. But you know, people are blinded. People are just obsessed with things like that, and most of it coming from health and safety officers that work for the government, and they're trying to tell people outdoors not to do this, you're not allowed to do that, and they are taking a lot away from us outdoors people. Okay, they're trying to take our kind of sense of freedom away, kind of thing. I'm not an activist or anything like that, but I have seen a lot of things that I don't like on Facebooks and on the news, on TV and things like that. So I can see why a lot of outdoors people are getting a bit peed off about it, to be fair, because we live in a world of greed and control, where people try and control us and tell us what to do, what to think and things like that. And you know, which is obviously a separate issue to what I'm talking about, but you can see where I'm going with this. But just leave it there. Don't take it outdoors with you, okay? Now, just because you've got some gloves on, for instance, and you're using a knife, you know, if you keep your knives like a razor, like I do, because it's easier to feather stick with, easier to carve with, okay? It might, to a degree, limit the damage, but it certainly won't stop you. Unless you're using Kevlar gloves or slash resistant gloves or anything like that, you'll never stop a knife going through a glove, okay? I've worn lots of gloves over the years in winter when it's cold and my hands are too cold to handle a knife, so you wear gloves. And I've worn you know, thick leather gloves and things like that, you know, and I've somehow always managed to nick the leather, and then the knife's gone through the leather and gone into my finger. You know, it's not going to stop you. It won't stop accidents from happening. We're only human, guys. We are only human. We make mistakes, you know. And then you can take all the precautions in the world, and then suddenly you're going back home away from camp. Your foot goes, you lose your footing down a pothole or something like that, and then you break your ankle. You know, accidents happen. That's why we do it. You know, there's always a risk when you're going outdoors. And there's always a risk when you're doing bushcraft. The risk was always going to be there, like a lot of hobbies, like 2 boxers in the ring. The risk is always going to be there. You know, one punch can kill the other boxer. Okay, it's the same thing. The risks are always going to be there. So to worry about what oil you're putting on your blades, you know, I just take it with a pinch of salt. You know, I've been doing it for years. I'm fine, and there is not enough oil on that blade to hurt anybody. Okay, you read the specs on WD-40 as I did this morning, or 3-in-1 oil. Okay, there is nothing in those chemicals, right, that's going to be enough to kill you. Okay, so I'm going to wrap that up now because it's getting to 27 minutes. But be interesting to hear what your thoughts is. If you think I'm wrong, then that's fine. I don't want to get into a heated argument. Just put your comments down below, and just tell me why you think I'm wrong. What do you think about health and safety into bushcraft? What do you think about using non-food grade oils on your knives, and things like that? Okay. Another thing what you can do, if that is worry, although sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. It depends. With my memory, it's touch and go. Sometimes I can remember to do something, and other times I can't. Okay, so you've got some 3-in-1 oil on your blade, and you want to use your knife for food prep, as well as prepping for wood and things like that. Okay, so if you remember to do this, okay, you unsheathe your knife. Your knife's got 3-in-1 oil on or whatever. Okay, there, all your oil is gone. You can now prepare your food. Okay, now that wasn't difficult, it took seconds to do. If you're that worried, then just do that, because when you wipe all the oil off the blade, I'm not saying there's probably going to be, yes, there's going to be very, very tiny and minute particles probably left on the blade. Okay, is that going to harm you? No, of course it won't. You know, I think we're just blinded by science. We're blinded by what people are telling us to do, and in a way it's controlling. Okay, again, that's my 2 pence worth. That's my opinions. I want to hear your opinions on the matter, so leave your comments down below, whether you agree with it or not. If you don't agree with what I've said, then tell me why, and yeah, that's it. Tell me what you think. Finish the rest of my tea now, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Bye for now. See you later, guys.